Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Till Mario Cristobal, Cam Ward, the Miami Hurricanes are putting the boys through it over the last couple of weeks. And Dill, this game felt different though, because Louisville, especially going on the road, like this was going to be one of the hardest games on the schedule for Miami. And are there things that Miami needs to clean up if they want to be a legitimate contender in the college football playoffs? Yeah, absolutely. But you're a contender when you have Cam Ward at quarterback. Want to get into, let's start with the good deal, because again, there was a lot of good, especially on the offensive side of the football. Then we're going to get to what needs to get cleaned up, specifically on the defense. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys, to the Miami Hurricane fans. Y'all know we have a blast talking this program, and the amount of support y'all continue to throw in the comment section means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. I think much more importantly, let it fly. Like, talk about some good things, but also would love to hear from you guys in terms of what needs to be cleaned up, because we're going to be talking a lot about that over the next couple of days. Because when you're a team like Miami, like, you want to make sure you're hitting your peak going into the month of November. And I don't think this team has hit it yet, but I think on offense, they're certainly getting close still. Let's start on the offensive side of the football, outside of Cam Ward just being, again, I think the Heisman, and I think the best quarterback in the country right now. What was your biggest takeaway from Miami on the offensive side of the football here?
I think the big thing is they really got to that rushing attack, and there were drives in that football game where they were really able to lean on Louisville. It felt like maybe they went away from it in the second quarter and maybe a little into the third quarter, but at the start of the game and then into the fourth quarter, that rushing attack is kind of the rushing attack I think a lot of people thought Miami was going to be able to have consistently. And today, I mean, they were playing, but did a really good
The
job running the ball.
the Miami fans who've been rocking with the boys, and we just talked about it yesterday, Friday. Like, do we see this Miami team try to find a little bit more balance? And I think it's a fascinating conversation, because like, I'm not going to be the one to get on a box and like chant to take the football out of Cam Ward's hands with how good this kid's been playing. That being said, the offensive line you have, the running back room you have, and it might take a little bit of pressure off Cam Ward. And Dill, quite frankly, I thought you kind of saw that play out. Like, you didn't really see Cam Ward try to do too much all that often in that football game. When you can supplement how good Cam Ward is with the run game, I think that allows Cam Ward to play his best football, where you're just getting the good and you're kind of eliminating some of the bad. And Dill, when you look into that run game, Damian Martinez, like, the Miami fans know I've been kind of critical of Damian Martinez throughout the first 6 games of the season. That's the Damian Martinez we were all expecting coming from Oregon State. Dill, leaning on a guy like Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher, just kind of grinding down this Louisville defense. I thought that was a massive storyline for Miami on the offensive side of the
And
football.
really, all three of them played well because you throw a Jay Allen and came in,
Yeah,
played really good football, kind of closed that game out for him. So, yeah, I think you have three good running backs. Mark Fletcher starting that game off was running so well. Again,
yep.
you kind of mentioned it. Damian Martinez found his stride, was playing better, and I think we've seen him play all year. I think the offensive line certainly did their part. I think Jalen Rivers being back, and obviously they had to shuffle it a little bit with some injuries late.
I like it.
But
I actually like, sorry to interrupt you, I love Mark Cabell, left tackle, because I mean, like, he was solid, and I think he's only getting better. Like, we know how talented this kid is, and then you kick Jalen Rivers into guard, which is probably where he's going to play when he goes to the NFL. Dill, I'm kind of a fan of that starting offensive line for the Miami Hurricanes.
Man, it was work. I mean, they were running the ball really well into like Louisville, knowing they were going to run the ball, and the fact that they were still able to kind of pound it on them. Again, really encouraging, because I think you're right. At the end of the day, when they play balanced, you got a really good, clean version of this offense where, again, like Cam Ward was still making his plays. You know he's going to make them, but also didn't really make any mistakes. You look a clean sheet in terms of like no interceptions. Obviously, they had that one fumble, but that was as clean of an offense, I think, as we've seen Miami play for the most part, given the competition.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, like, we've seen Miami is number one in the country in scoring offense, averaging 46 points per game. Like, they put up 52. That was probably the best. Or what, Miami punted 2 times. And I think another conversation about the run game is, look how good Miami was on third downs, like 9 of 14, 2 of 2 on fourth downs. When you can run the football successfully on first and second down, you stay in those third and manageable situations, which is massive for two things. One, you're going to be more efficient on third downs. You're going to be able to possess the ball a little bit longer. I think, secondly, it takes Cam Ward out of those third and long situations where, look, we know Cam Ward can cook, but we don't want him living there. You want Cam Ward you want to be aggressive in favorable down and distances. You don't want him trying to be too aggressive in those third and long spots. The thing with Damian,
like that passing attack is still so good. I mean, they made big explosive plays. Like you can rely on them on third and long. Like I don't want to like ignore the fact that passing the offense probably still should be at least running through that passing attack, and then obviously not going away from the run. But the ball still needs to be in Ward's hand because you look. I mean, that throw to Jacoby George in the back of the end zone. That's like one of the better plays you'll see in college football. Obviously, Sammy Brown making plays, Horton making plays. So like I think the wide receiver room is really loaded. I mean, that
what I love about
what I talk about the run and not like say they shouldn't.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's like the conversation is like, how much do you want them to run the football? And you have Cam Ward at quarterback. I thought you saw in the passing attack how well rounded this wide receiver room is really show out. Like when it was in the red zone or some of those third and short situations, like Xavier Restrepo was your guy. You have a guy like Jacoby George that's providing you those flash plays, Isaiah Horton in the red zone as well. You got so many different wide receivers that excel in so many different situations. Still, I thought this was probably the best that Miami's offense has looked all year, and that's a good thing because Miami's offense has looked pretty damn good throughout the start of 2024. Now, that's some positives. Let's get to the negative, and that's on the defensive side of the football. The one big let's start positive on defense as well. That pass rush is disgusting. Like you talk about Ruben Bain, probably one of, if not the best edge rusher in the ACC. You have Tyler Banner, Elijah Alston on the other side. Then you got Simeon Barrow on the inside. You talk about hitting on a transfer portal target. They've crushed it with Simeon Barrow, not only because of what he can do as a pass rusher, but how good he is against the run as well. Dill, that defensive line is taking so much pressure off the secondary. Now, we got to talk about the secondary, but if there's one positive to take away is I don't think, like Louisville has a solid offensive line. I don't see that many teams across the country consistently dropping back on this Miami Hurricanes team because of how good that pass rush is. When you have a pass rush like this, it gives you the ability to play some really good defense.
Well, and that's what gets a little frustrating, I think, if you're a Miami fan, because that pass rush and defensive line in general is kind of dominating in the way that they really should be a great defense, I think, but they're still giving up the big plays. That's kind of like, I think, what's really getting a little frustrating for Miami. And yeah, I actually thought on the whole the defense played well. Obviously, the special teams touchdown and then right into a fumble. So, like, you look at those two plays, like a bit of a wash, frankly. So you probably should take 14 off directly on the defense. And they made some plays for sure, but again, fitting runs, doing some like, they still need to do a better job with that. I know they want to be aggressive, but man, they're leaving some big gaping holes to run through, and they can't have 50-yard runs. That's just like
I think
teams on the field are too good.
I think there's two things that you can have in this conversation, and one is Miami. That we want to see this defense continue to improve. I think the other conversation is we said this was going to be a tough matchup for Miami regardless. Like this from a pure, one, Louisville is a really good team and you're playing them on the road, but I think more importantly, this matchup with a young and inexperienced and some new faces in the secondary. Miami's not really sure how they want that defensive secondary rotation to look. Going up against Coach Brom, who is, I think he's a top 5 in-game coach that you see in the country. I don't think it gets much better than Coach Brom. And quite frankly, I think Coach Brom and Louisville staff outcoached Miami staff in this football game as well. It was going to be a tough matchup. And then secondly, like Miami in the run game, they want to get vertical. They want to create negative plays. No, I like it. That being said, you have some really explosive running backs for Louisville that when you give them that seam, they can make you pay. Some safeties like Jaden Harris took some bad angles in that football game. And we kind of talked about that in the preview. It kind of came to fruition in that football game. It's worth like Louisville put up over 400 yards of offense on Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's a defense that's probably top 5 in the country. This is a good defense. But if you're Miami, you still have some. Were there any guys, I guess, like looking for how it gets better? Like, what would be your answer to this Miami Hurricanes secondary? And quite frankly, the defense overall.
I mean, honestly, outside of that late penalty, I thought Ja'Day Richards played really, really well. I think he's a guy who I like plays the football a little bit better. That pass interference late, like kind of gross. I don't know really what he was thinking. Just kind of like, it almost felt like a bit of a lazy play, frankly. But down to down, I thought he had a really, really nice game. I still think Porter's playing solid football for them, but I think Richards probably should be playing a little bit more because Diani Hill, I don't know. That's a close battle, I think, in that rotation.
It was tough because Diani Hill had a really good start to the season. He was very, very bad against Louisville. I think if you're Lance Guidry, you're Mario Cristobal, you just got to find that rotation and try to stick with it, because one of the bigger problems I see is there's not a ton of gel and chemistry with the secondary unit. Like when they play man coverage, Jeff Brown was able to dial up some man beaters, and it's tough to play man against Coach Brown because he's going to know how to pick you apart. And then in zone coverage, it seems like there's a lot of throwing windows. Like it doesn't seem like they're passing off zone coverage all that well. There were a lot of easy throws for Tyler Shuck to make. I think you got to find your rotation and you got to try to stick with it. That's the goal for Miami over the next couple of weeks, where they're going to be favored by multiple touchdowns in a lot of these football games. You got to use these next couple of weeks to kind of find that rotation. One other thing I want to say and continue to point out is that I think Francisco Mauigoa had some solid plays, and I thought you saw him kind of flash what he looked like in 2023, but there's continuing to be some missed tackles and some bad run fits from Kiko. I don't know if it's a health thing. I don't know if it's just a few bad games. You do want to see Miami and the linebackers at that second level tackle a little bit better in space moving forward for this defense.
Especially when you want to play that aggressive, you want your middle linebacker to be kind of an eraser. Like when you want your defensive linemen, they're making a lot of tackles. So it's not like they have a ton of work in the second level, but I think you're right. They need to be more consistent fitting the runs. I think, again, giving up those big explosive ones, did it to Virginia Tech, did it against now Louisville again. So I'm kind of with you. I think the linebacking play can be a lot better because I look at the talent in that group. I think they're pretty good.
I got one more thing in my notes. Zaquan Patterson, I thought flashed, and OJ Frederick. I thought you had a couple true freshmen that they're certainly making an argument for playing time. My last takeaway, Dill, you saw Miami have their back against the wall on the road again and pull it out. And again, like I think Miami fans are sick and tired of seeing Miami get their back against the wall against teams they probably should be putting away earlier. You talk about on the road at Cal. You come back and win that football game. There was all the momentum in the world going towards Louisville way. It ended up being a tie game. What does Cam Ward do? Goes out and wins you a football game. The Virginia Tech, another game. I mean, that's 3 straight wins where it's like back against the wall. We're used to seeing Miami not win these football games, and they're pulling them out. And again, I think you know how dangerous this team can be when they have a Heisman Trophy quarterback and running their offense. But if they want to be super dangerous in the college football playoffs, there's certainly things that you want to see get cleaned up as well. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys again. To the Miami Hurricane fans, all the support means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.